In the digital age, a language dies twice. First, when the last elder stops speaking it. Second, when the algorithms categorically refuse to recognize it. Welcome to a special edition of AI Unraveled. I am Etienne Newman, software engineer from Université Laval, based in Calgary, Alberta. Today, we are performing a forensic autopsy on the algorithmic colonization of our culture. Because frontier artificial intelligence models are overwhelmingly engineered in Silicon Valley and trained on Anglo-American datasets, they are silently standardizing the way humanity thinks. For languages like French, and specifically Quebec French, the threat is no longer physical assimilation. It is invisible algorithmic erasure. We are looking at the raw data today. Researchers tested 111 language models, and a staggering 65.77% of them fail completely to understand québécois idioms. Worse, these models are generating aggressive syntactic Anglicisms, stripping away authentic French grammar and replacing it with direct English translations cloaked in French vocabulary. They are destroying the structural integrity of the language from the inside out. From the tokenization tax that financially penalizes regional dialects to the data deserts erasing indigenous languages like Western Shoshone, to the massive $250 million sovereign AI hubs being built in Quebec to fight back, we are unraveling the existential threat to global linguistic diversity. Before we dive into the data, a quick reminder: subscribe to AI Unraveled on Apple Podcasts to enjoy this briefing completely ads-free. Today's episode is brought to you exclusively by JamgaMind. When hyperscalers deploy algorithms that actively erase your cultural nuances and regional dialects for the sake of compute efficiency, true business intelligence requires local clarity. JamgaMind delivers the human-verified, technical-grade audio forensics the C-suite relies on to navigate these massive geopolitical shifts and protect their digital sovereignty. Visit jamgamind.com. Let's unravel the survival of language.
You know, it is often said that in the digital age, a language basically dies twice.
Yeah, twice.
Right. First, when the last elder stops speaking it, and second, when the algorithms just completely refuse to recognize it.
Which is happening right now.
Exactly. Welcome to today's deep dive into what researchers are now calling algorithmic colonization. I really want you to think about the AI tools that you use every single day.
Yeah, the chatbots, the predictive text, all of it.
Right, the automated assistants. We tend to think of them as these, neutral, magical translation devices that just inherently understand us.
Right.
But what if they aren't neutral at all? What if, under the hood, artificial intelligence is actually structurally forcing the entire globe to think, reason, and speak using Anglo-American syntax?
And neoliberal values, really.
Yeah. Today, we are pulling from a massive, highly detailed research report titled The Algorithmic Erasure of Linguistic Diversity.
It's a heavy one.
It is. And just a quick note before we jump in, our goal today is simply to impartially unpack the technical architecture and the factual findings in this source material.
Right, we're not picking sides here.
No, we aren't taking sides on any geopolitical language policies, and we aren't endorsing any specific government mandates. We're just, looking squarely at the data to understand the mechanics of how these systems are actually built.
And I've got to tell you, the data paints a very, very clear picture. The homogenization effect we are seeing, like this flattening of global language, it isn't some quirky software bug that Silicon Valley just, forgot to patch.
It's not an accident.
No, not at all. It is a structural, architectural reality of how frontier models are fundamentally built. The bias is embedded in every single stage of the pipeline.
Wow.
Yeah, from how the initial data is scraped off the web to how the neural network maps human concepts and its core logic.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because when I type a prompt into a chatbot in, say, regional French or Swahili, I always just assumed the machine was basically reading it in that language.
Right, that's what everyone assumes.
But the report says it's doing something much weirder. So what is actually happening under the hood when you give an AI a non-English prompt?
Well, to really understand that, we have to look at what researchers call an implicit pivot translation.
Pivot translation?
Yeah. You have to remember that over 90% of the training data for these massive frontier models comes from English and Western sources.
Because the internet is just so disproportionately Anglophone.
Exactly. So English acts as this dominant semantic anchor. Think of the AI's latent space, which is its internal processing center.
Right.
Think of it like a massive multidimensional filing cabinet where it stores all its concepts.
Okay, I'm visualizing the filing cabinet.
But the labels on every single folder in that entire cabinet are written in English.
Wait, really? So even if I ask it a question in another language, it's still like opening English folders?
It basically has to. The model maps the semantic meaning of your non-English prompt into its English-dominant latent space.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it figures out the logic, generates a response conceptually rooted in an Anglo-American framework, and then it just sort of slaps a foreign linguistic mask on the output before handing it back to you.
That is fascinating. So the output is fundamentally an Anglo-American thought just wearing a translation trench coat.
Yeah, that's a great way to visualize it. And the structural bias, it gets mathematically enforced at the very first step of the pipeline, which is tokenization.
Tokenization, right?
Yeah. Tokenizers are basically the algorithms that chop text down into machine-readable numerical chunks, which they call byte-pair tokens.
Okay.
Imagine the machine trying to break words into Lego blocks so it can process them mathematically.
Right, but those Lego blocks aren't all the same size, are they?
They aren't, not at all. Tokenizers are highly optimized for the prestige dialects that are prevalent in their training data.
So like standard English.
Exactly. For the 1.5 billion people who speak English, the tokenizer recognizes whole words easily. It's super efficient.
Makes sense.
But if you prompt the system using a non-standard dialect or, regional language, the tokenizer doesn't recognize your vocabulary as whole blocks.
So what does it do?
It fractures them. It breaks them down into much smaller, disjointed pieces. And this creates something the researchers call tokenization friction.
Wait, I want to make sure I grasp the real-world impact of that. If my native language is getting fractured into way more tiny Lego blocks than English, doesn't that require more processing power?
Yes, a lot more.
Is this basically like being charged a premium shipping fee by the post office just for writing an address in your native dialect?
It literally is. The industry actually refers to this as the Tokenization Tax.
A tax, wow.
Yeah, because your regional language is fragmented into more tokens, two huge things happen. First, it degrades the AI's contextual understanding, making the model perform way worse for you.
Right, the quality drops.
And second, if you're a developer building an app, it physically costs you more compute money, like via API pricing, to process those regional languages.
That's insane.
I know. The architecture of the system financially punishes linguistic diversity.
So you have a financial tax on the front end, but the report also talks about something called an alignment tax on the back end.
Oh, yeah, the alignment tax.
I mean, I know alignment is the big tech buzzword for making sure an AI doesn't output dangerous or toxic content, but how does that hurt language?
The problem lies in the human raters. Frontier models use a process called reinforcement learning from human feedback, or RLHF, to make the AI safe and helpful.
Okay, humans giving it a thumbs up or thumbs down.
Right. But the thousands of human raters employed to train the AI are instructed to apply highly standardized, neutral, corporate criteria.
Ah, I see where this is going.
Yeah, it inevitably penalizes colloquialisms, regional slang, or culturally specific viewpoints that deviate from a mainstream consensus. The system is actively trained to prioritize a flattened prestige language.
And I imagine users just adapt to it because it's easier. I mean, if the AI doesn't understand your local slang, you just stop using it in your prompts, right?
You've hit on the core danger right there. Users want quick answers. They don't want to constantly revise their prompts.
Of course not.
So they accept these generic, flattened outputs, and then those AI-generated outputs flood the internet, get scraped as the training data for the next generation of models, and create a recursive feedback loop that aggressively narrows human expression.
Wow. I want to take this out of the abstract technical realm and look at how this plays out in the real world.
Sure.
Because the report provides a highly visible empirical microcosm of this exact phenomenon, which is Quebec French, or le français québécois.
A perfect example.
And we aren't just talking about a slight accent shift from Parisian French here. We are talking about a completely distinct vocabulary, unique syntax, and a rich history tied to a very specific social evolution in North America.
Right. What's fascinating here is that when you run Quebec French through models engineered in California, which are trained primarily on European Parisian French data, that cultural essence is just completely stripped away.
Gone.
Completely. The Group for Research in Artificial Intelligence at Laval University proved this empirically. They built a benchmark specifically called QFrCoRE to test how these large language models handle regional idioms.
And the failure rate they found is staggering.
That's massive.
65.77% of the LLMs they tested fail significantly on Quebec idioms.
Over half.
Yeah. Just to give you an example from the research that really made me laugh, but also highlights the problem perfectly. If you prompt an AI with the phrase attache-toi avec de la broche, which literally translates to fasten your winter hat with wire, but idiomatically means brace yourself for what's coming.
A great phrase, by the way.
Right. But the AI completely erases the idiom. It spits back the literal Parisian standard equivalent. Attache ta ceinture, fasten your seatbelt.
Yeah, and while that example is funny, the erasure touches on some deeply profound cultural history.
How so?
Consider les sacres, the unique québécois swear words that are traditionally rooted in Catholic Church terminology.
Oh, right, like words based on religious items.
Exactly. To an AI aligned with strict Silicon Valley safety protocols, words based on a chalice or a tabernacle are either flagged as unsafe profanity or categorized as typos to be auto-corrected.
But those words aren't just random profanity to the people there.
Far from it. Sociologically, these words are complex linguistic markers. They reflect the secularization and rebellion of Quebec society against the church during the Quiet Revolution of the 1960s.
That's a huge piece of history.
Right. And by filtering them out as mere typos, the AI effectively deletes a vital window into a shared cultural history.
Wow.
And the tragic result is that users start to code switch. They realize the machine simply doesn't understand their heritage, so they intentionally adopt standard Parisian French just to get their digital tasks done.
They're adapting to the machine.
Yes. They are inadvertently accelerating the demise of their own dialect.
Which opens the door for a phenomenon the report calls Syntactic Anglicism.
Ah, yes.
Calques. And this is where things get really insidious, because we aren't just talking about swapping out slang words anymore. We are talking about the AI generating English grammatical structures, but clothing them in French vocabulary.
Yeah, and this goes back directly to that implicit English pivot language we talked about earlier.
Right.
The AI is reasoning in English and just translating the words verbatim.
Exactly. So the report shows the AI will generate a phrase like prendre un cours, which is a direct, literal, word-for-word translation of the English phrase to take a course, instead of outputting the structurally correct French phrase, which is suivre un cours.
It's technically French words, but English logic.
Yeah. Or it will translate an open-line radio show literally as ligne ouverte instead of the historically accurate French term tribune téléphonique.
This actively attacks the structural integrity of how the language operates.
It really does.
The linguistic campaigns highlighted in the report track a terrifying generational decay timeline regarding this exact phenomenon.
The timeline is wild.
It is. So in the year 2000, a Québécois speaker might say, j'ai appelé ma mère. By 2010, with the slow creep of Anglicisms from the internet, it morphs into j'ai calé ma mère. They're using an English root word, but at least integrating it into French conjugation.
Right, a bit of a hybrid.
But by 2030, driven by the absolute normalization of AI chatbots and automated text correction, the projection is a fully unintegrated, morphologically broken sentence. J'ai comme ma mom.
It's just falling apart. Listen, trying to navigate this massive shift in AI architecture based on Twitter hype is corporate malpractice. Stop collecting shiny beta apps and start deploying actual infrastructure. Etienne has audited the market for the AI Unraveled community. Head over to dgemjammine.com/toolkit for the AI Executive Toolkit. This is a private, forensic vetted stack featuring tools like Chatbase and 11 Labs enterprise-grade weapons designed to drive actual governed ROI. Because as we're seeing, if you don't control the infrastructure controls you.
That is exactly the reality we're facing.
And I think this raises a much darker question.
No.
Yeah. If a well-resourced, highly visible language like Quebec French is struggling this much against algorithmic colonization, what is happening to the minority languages that the AI cannot see at all?
That brings us to the global crisis of data deserts.
The data deserts. Right.
The digital divide in artificial intelligence isn't actually about how many people speak a language. The dividing line is entirely about the availability of machine-readable, digitized data.
This statistic blew my mind in the report. You have a massive language like Swahili with 200 million speakers that completely fails in large language models.
Totally fails.
Yet Welsh, which has a tiny fraction of the speakers, performs incredibly well. Why is there such a massive discrepancy?
Because Welsh has benefited from extensive, targeted digital preservation efforts.
Like what?
Well, they have government grants for translation memory, a heavily digitized BBC broadcasting archive, and really active Wikipedia communities.
Ah, so the AI has plenty to read.
Exactly. Swahili, despite its massive population, relies heavily on oral digital culture, things like WhatsApp voice notes, which aren't publicly scraped or archived as open source text.
So it's invisible to the web scrapers.
Right. So the AI has no corpus to learn from. When you look at the Sahara benchmark, which recently evaluated 517 African languages, the statistics are just devastating.
Yeah, 88%.
88% of those languages are severely underrepresented. Major languages spoken by tens of millions of people like Wolof, Hausa, or Oromo, they consistently fail at basic reasoning tasks.
That's unbelievable.
Or take the Uto-Aztecan language Nahuatl, spoken by 1.5 million people in the Americas. It completely fails in frontier models. The AI is entirely blind to them.
And the human cost of that blindness is heartbreaking.
It really is.
The report details the case of the Western Shoshone dialect in North America. There was an elder named May Timbimbu Carey, and she held thousands of traditional words describing incredibly precise angles of sunlight and highly specific animal tracks that don't even have English equivalents.
Such a huge loss of knowledge.
Yeah, because when community members tried to use modern AI transcription tools to digitize and record the ecological knowledge of surviving elders, the algorithms just returned error messages.
They couldn't process it.
No, the machine failed to even recognize the audio as human language.
This is the textbook definition of epistemic erasure.
Epistemic erasure, let's define that.
Epistemology is essentially the study of knowledge. It's the specific framework a culture uses to categorize and interact with the natural world. So when an AI can't process those hyper-specific words for sunlight and animal tracks, that knowledge literally cannot exist within the digital ecosystem. It is systemically deleted from the future of computation.
Which makes me wonder, are we unintentionally sending younger generations a psychological message that their mother tongue is completely obsolete? Because if a teenager's smartphone can't even recognize their grandparents' language as human, why would they bother learning it?
Yeah, that psychological mechanism is precisely what drives digital extinction.
That's terrifying.
If your language isn't supported by the digital assistants, the educational software, or the civic platforms of the future, you are economically forced to abandon it to participate in the modern world.
You have no choice.
Right. And the stark realization that linguistic sovereignty is now identical to infrastructural sovereignty is causing governments around the world to panic.
Understandably.
They are no longer willing to rely entirely on Silicon Valley. They're building digital fortresses.
And this is where we see massive geopolitical pushback, specifically through the heavy capitalization of sovereign AI.
Exactly. For government bodies and enterprise leaders, deciding whether to invest in sovereign AI infrastructure or rely on hyperscalers following Silicon Valley hype is a risk to national sovereignty. Jamgamind provides the human-verified, technical-grade audio forensics required to make these massive capital decisions safely. Visit djamgamind.com.
The capital being deployed here is staggering, really.
Oh, absolutely.
Canada has launched a $2 billion compute strategy.
$2 billion.
Yeah, and in Quebec, we are seeing the vanguard of this movement with a $250 million sovereign AI research hub being built in LaSalle by Mila and Hypertech.
That's a massive physical investment.
And I have to ask about the physical reality of this. Why do they physically need to build data centers in LaSalle, cooled by local Quebec resources? Why can't they just rent server space from existing hyperscalers like, I don't know, Amazon or Google and build a French AI in the cloud?
To keep proprietary and cultural data strictly behind local firewalls. If you want to train an AI on sensitive local journalism, unreleased parliamentary records, and indigenous archives, you cannot risk surrendering that data to foreign monopolies.
That makes total sense.
You need the physical hardware on your own soil. You have to ensure the digital epistemology of your culture isn't being sucked into a California server farm, digested, and sold back to you with an American accent.
Wow. And they are backing up that hardware with incredibly heavy legislative shields.
Yes, the laws are getting strict.
Again, just impartially reporting on the compliance reality for businesses here. Quebec's Bill 96 and their modification of the Charter of Human Rights, which is known as the Discoverability Act, are legally forcing digital platforms to prioritize French.
This legal mandate now.
Right. If you are an enterprise deploying an automated chatbot for customer service in Quebec, it cannot just lazily translate English thoughts into broken, anglicized French. It is a strict regulatory mandate to operate in high-quality, culturally accurate French.
And local institutions are getting incredibly granular with this defense.
Like who?
The Office Québécois de la Langue Française, the OQLF, is actively creating terminological controls to prevent English tech jargon from invading the language. They are officially standardizing terms.
Wait, so they're literally inventing French tech words to fight off English ones?
Yes. Under their guidelines, you aren't using a recommendation algorithm. You are using an algorithm de recommendation.
Okay.
You don't send a voice memo, you send a voxto.
A voxto.
Yeah. They are trying to anchor the discourse of the AI revolution deeply in the French language, rather than letting English dictate the vocabulary of the future.
It's an all-out battle for the foundational words of the next century.
It really is. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it extends far beyond Quebec.
Who else is doing this?
Well, the Organisation Internationale de la Francophonie, the OIF, which represents 300 million speakers globally, is taking this exact fight to the United Nations.
The UN. Wow.
Yeah. They are pushing back against the PR narratives of tech executives who brag about automated translation supposedly solving the language barrier.
Because it doesn't really solve it.
Right. The OIF argues that automated translation, as it stands today, is essentially digital imperialism. It doesn't prevent epistemic erasure. It just hollows out the language from the inside.
Right.
They are demanding structural digital diversity as a matter of international law.
Because the fight for linguistic diversity isn't just about preserving a quaint accent. It is about resisting a monolithic, standardized version of human thought.
Exactly.
If we all rely on the exact same English-dominant latent space to process our ideas, we lose the vibrancy, the friction, and the unique problem-solving capabilities that come from different cultural frameworks.
We lose diversity of thought.
But as we reach the end of this deep dive, the research leaves us with a massive technical paradox regarding this sovereign AI approach.
Yeah, the paradox of isolation versus global collaboration.
Right.
If a region, whether it's Quebec, France, or anywhere else, builds a completely isolated sovereign AI trained strictly on its own cultural data behind a local firewall, it might perfectly preserve its dialect.
Which is the goal.
But it risks being intellectually stunted.
Right, because developing true frontier-level AI requires planetary-scale data.
Exactly.
Like, if you look at something like the Nobel-winning AlphaFold database that completely revolutionized drug discovery in biology, no single nation could have assembled that dataset in isolation.
It's impossible.
If your purely sovereign AI is cut off from global scientific, mathematical, and coding datasets, your society just falls behind the rest of the world.
You're left in the dark ages. Computationally.
So how do you solve that? Do you just have to choose between cultural preservation and technological advancement?
Well, policy analysts are pointing to a highly technical third path.
A third path.
Yeah. The solution likely lies in using global open source foundational models like Meta's Llama, for example, but utilizing your localized sovereign compute capacity to fine-tune those models using a technique called parameter-efficient fine-tuning, or PEF.
Okay, what does parameter-efficient fine-tuning actually mean in practice? How does it fix the paradox?
Training a massive AI from scratch costs hundreds of millions of dollars.
Right, it's incredibly expensive.
But PEF allows you to take an already trained massive global model, freeze its core knowledge base, so you keep the math, the science, the coding abilities.
Oh, that's smart.
And you only retrain a tiny targeted percentage of its outer neural layers using your local cultural data.
So you download the massive global intelligence, but you refine it locally behind your own firewalls.
Exactly.
You mathematically force the model to warp its neural pathways to match your syntax, your vocabulary, your idioms without losing the science.
You've got it. It's an attempt to overlay a cultural filter onto global computational power.
That is fascinating.
But, it remains an open question whether this hybrid approach can truly hold back the massive tide of algorithmic homogenization.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? We started by saying a language dies twice. Once when the last elder stops speaking it, and again when the algorithms refuse to recognize it.
Yeah.
As you navigate the AI tools in your own life today, I want you to really pay attention to the friction.
Notice what the machine is doing to your words.
Right. Notice when the machine subtly autocorrects your local slang. Notice when it gently forces you to phrase your thoughts just a little bit more cleanly, a little more uniformly to get a better answer.
It's happening to all of us.
It is. The algorithms are learning to speak to us, but the lingering question is, will we successfully teach them the true depth of our languages, or will we eventually be forced to think exclusively in theirs? Subscribe to AI Unraveled on Apple Podcasts to always listen completely without a single ad.
That concludes our forensic autopsy on linguistic survival in the AI era. The strategic signal for today is sovereignty. Technology is never neutral. When an algorithm systematically suppresses Québécois vocabulary in favor of a sanitized Parisian standard, or when it forces English grammar into our sentences, it is not a software bug, it is an engineering choice. If we surrender control of our words to servers based in Silicon Valley, we surrender control of our thoughts. That is exactly why massive investments in sovereign AI infrastructure right here at home are no longer optional. They are the only way to prevent epistemic erasure. If you refuse to let your enterprise or your culture be dictated by an algorithmic black box, you need the right tools. Head over to djamgamind.com/toolkit for my AI Executive Toolkit. I have personally audited the market to bring you a forensic vetted implementation stack to deploy real infrastructure today. This episode was made possible exclusively by Jamgamind. Hit subscribe on Apple Podcasts to enjoy this briefing completely ads-free. I am Etienne Newman. Stay vigilant, protect your code and your culture, and keep unraveling the future. And before you go, if your company is building the tools that power the workflows we talked about today, I'd love to showcase them to this audience. We don't just run ads, we build technical simulations that prove your value. Let's build something together. Visit jamgamind.com/partners to get started. Until next time, keep building.